This is MATLAB Press.
Welcome to episode 2 of my podcast, Mad Labyrinth. The Toronto Police have been known to have training issues when it comes to mental health and people in crisis. A disturbing trend is occurring where individuals having a mental health episode or crisis are dying at the hands of the Toronto Police at an alarming rate. In this episode, I spoke with Vanessa Prasad, whose brother was killed and fell to his death at the hands of the Toronto Police. His name was Bobby Ramroop. Vanessa tries to make sense of why her brother fell to his death and why the Toronto Police were incompetent in saving his life instead of ending it. How are you, Vanessa?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, and I told the audience that we spoke it was a few months ago, I think. So, Vanessa, can you just give us a little bit of background? I know that Bobby worked for FedEx, correct?
Yes, he worked for FedEx full-time and he worked for Uber Eats part-time.
Okay, and for FedEx, what did he actually do at the
He worked
company?
at the warehouse in Mississauga downtown area and he was working as a cargo handler.
Okay, and he liked his job, obviously. It seemed like it.
He did. He liked socializing with everybody in the morning. A few people said they didn't even like going into work, but just seeing Bobby would make their day better.
Yeah, he seemed like a pretty jovial person.
Yeah.
So, can you just take us back to the day that that this all happened? And I know the Toronto Police attended along with the ETF. The film I did about Bobby, it was shocking. The information that I found out from Vanessa. Vanessa supplied me with every piece of information that she had. She is very passionate about this subject. I can only imagine why. And she has an issue, which I also do, with the Toronto Police when it comes to the handling of mentally ill persons and people in crisis. So we're going to hear from Vanessa about exactly what happened that day. Go ahead, Vanessa.
So, on October 13th, 2022, my mom and myself were at work. Bobby was home that day from work. He was supposed to attend work at FedEx. His shift usually starts early in the morning, but he didn't end up going to work on that day. My mom noticed this prior to her leaving for work that day that he didn't go to work. She didn't think anything of it. She got dressed. She went to work on October 13th, 2022. A little later in the day, closer to 1 to 2 p.m., she got a text message from Bobby, and he texted her that somebody was burning down the house, but he didn't spell burning properly. So my mom messaged him back. She goes, what do you mean burning down the house? And he didn't respond. So she gave him a ring on his phone twice. He didn't answer. She thought he was sleeping because all of us are usually in our rooms sleeping. So she went about her day. Her shift finishes closer to 4 p.m. She got another message from Bobby saying, "Mom, someone is trying to break in the house." This message came maybe an hour after the burning down the house message.
Just for our audience, Vanessa,
Yeah.
the place where Bobby was living at the time with your mother, that was an apartment building, correct?
Yes, it's the apartment building on 1825 Finch Avenue West.
And that was the top floor, I believe, that Bobby lived on.
Yes, we live on the highest floor, which is the 16th floor of the building, and
Okay.
it's the end unit of the building located to the corner of the building.
Okay. Perfect.
And he did text her that someone is trying to break in the house, and she was really confused. She gave him another ring. He didn't answer. She took the bus home, took her about an hour and a half to get home. When she was about 10 minutes away, she got a call from a neighbor. The neighbor asked her, Debbie, what's going on in your apartment? She said, what are you talking about? She said, so the neighbor says, there's about 10 police officers in the hallway of the building and all in your unit.
So the police were actually in your unit.
Yes. And the way the neighbor saw this is my older brother, Sadesh, they actually yelled at Sadesh to get out. They didn't tell him why, didn't tell him what was going on. They said they banged on the door. They got in the apartment with the super's key. They yelled at Sud. They said, get out. He didn't have time to put on no slippers. He knocked on the neighbor's door and he asked, can I give my mom a call? Up to this point, Sud didn't even know what was going on with Bobby.
Okay.
When the neighbor called my mom, she said there's a bunch of paper on the ground outside the building, documents, paper all over. My mom got off the bus at Finch and Driftwood Avenue, and as she's walking towards the building, she sees clothing on the ground, paper, lots and lots of documents. There's an officer on the sidewalk. Before you even get to the building, he says, who are you? She says, I'm the mom. I live in this building. I'm trying to get to my house. She said that the officer said, the mom of who? He said, Bobby. He actually pushed her with his arm. I forgot to mention this to you when you attended us that day.
Okay.
He pushed her back. He said, you cannot go in the building right now. Something is going on with Bobby. She forced her way through. Like, she just came from work. She needs to get in her house. She forced her way through, getting to the lobby of the building. Officers following her, obviously trying to restrain her from going into the building. By restraining, I mean following her, walking in front of her, and like barricading her from going in.
So they were obstructing her.
To the lobby of the building.
They were obstructing her way either way. Like
yeah,
they were okay.
Yeah. And as my mom is also trying to enter the building, there's a bunch of police car, I think 5 or 6, all around the building. There's officers at the side of the building, at the back of the building, at the front of the building had 2 or 3. They told her she cannot go upstairs to wait in the superintendent's office.
Okay.
She was put in the superintendent's office and she said she needs her other son, Sadesh, with her. Up to now, they've not told us what's going on with him, what's happening, or why we're being kept there. My mom gave me a call. I live in Brampton. She was crying. She's like, I don't know what's going on with Bobby. Can you come right away? I hopped on the 407. I got here within 20 minutes. When I came to the building, I was escorted in the superintendent's office as well. After they sat us all down in the superintendent's office, they said, all of you guys are not to contact Bobby. He's going through psychosis. We're going to get him help. Don't worry. We're just going to handcuff him. You don't need to be alarmed or worried. He will get the handcuffs and be taken to Cam H.
Okay.
My mom said, my biggest concern is our windows. Our windows are meshless. That, like, my son has been going through depression the past few months from workplace. The officer told her again, he's going through psychosis. We're going to get him help.
So there was no screens on your actual windows itself, like those bug screens, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
And I guess so this was like 5 p.m.-ish. They kept us in the superintendent's office. It's going like 5 p.m., 6 p.m. Like no one's telling us what's going on. We see the cameras in the superintendent's office. There's just more officers arriving. ETF is arriving with a door rammer. We're so confused. We don't know what's going on. We can't text or call Bobby because there is an officer with us in the office. And every time he would take out our phones, he was kind of watching us like, hey, what are you guys messaging? Who are you talking to?
So just for the audience,
yeah.
When Vanessa mentions ETF, that is the Toronto Police Emergency Task Force. And what they do besides beating people and murdering people, they they basically they're dressed like army military that they're going into combat. They have helmets on, they have knee pads, arm pads, bulletproof vests, machine guns, and they storm into buildings and houses where mentally ill people are or having an episode, and they make it worse. Wouldn't you agree, Vanessa?
Yes, and I agree with you 110% on that, because I later found out uh that gave Bobby a even more like high sense of fear. He went from like a 10 scared to like a 25 scared.
Right.
And like they kept us in the office for over like 4 to 5 hours. I'm not sure of their interaction with him the whole night. They just maintained they were getting him help. I'm not sure why ETF was called in with door rammers, all this headgear, all this body gear. My brother did not have weapons on him. He did not have drugs on him. Just because he had a criminal record in his youth, by youth I mean 15 to 18 years of age. If he had anything prior, it was very minor.
Right.
I don't know what the interaction was with them and him. I've never felt my brother's fear so much in my life.
I can
Like,
imagine.
how does someone fall 16 stories high and they were pleading with you to speak with their mom for the one last time? And their justification for that is that family members are seen as triggers?
Okay.
Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, my brother was a chubby, healthy guy working 2 jobs. Why on earth would my mom be a trigger if he is 32 asking for her?
Well, because the police believe in their own minds that they know what people need and want. And that's a perfect example in this situation where the police believed that having you or your mother speak to Bobby would make a negative impact, which is the complete opposite. If he's begging to speak to your mother, I have no idea why they would not let that happen.
And I have no idea why the Joseph Martino had the nerve to say all officers were found no wrongdoing. How did someone end up dead if you responded to a call that he was in depression? He placed a 911 call himself that day.
Joseph
He had to
Martino.
have known that.
Joseph Martino, for the audience, he's the director of the SIU, which is the Special Investigations Unit. And that's Special Investigations Unit investigates wrongdoings with police. When they invoke their mandate, it's usually if somebody dies in police custody or is injured. And those injuries have to meet a certain criteria for the SIU to investigate, and that's usually a broken bone. So if you don't have a broken bone, then SIU, for the most part, is not invoked. In this situation, Joseph Martino, who is the director of the SIU, found that every single officer that arrived on scene that day, including the ETF sergeant that made that call where Bobby wasn't allowed to speak to his mother, were found there was no wrongdoing whatsoever. Every single police officer on scene was found innocent. That's disgusting to me. And that sergeant, we'll get into that shortly, but that sergeant who made that call should not have a job right now. Wouldn't you agree, Vanessa?
That sergeant right now should not have a job right now, and I hope that sergeant who made that call thinks about my brother every day.
So as far as that sergeant goes, Vanessa, he made a horrible call that day. And can you maybe explain what happened when that sergeant arrived on scene?
Yes, when that sergeant arrived on scene, we had no idea Bobby had passed. Everybody in the building knew he passed. When he fell 16 stories high, they just covered him. They didn't check for a pulse. A lot of them actually had smiles on their face, like they just watched a comedy show.
Wow.
I heard this from people who live in the building. They said when your brother fell, there was actually officers with smiles on their faces. So a life being lost in front of them, it has no impact on them because at the end of the day, they're collecting a fat pay. They do not lose their job even if somebody dies.
Right. No, it's true. It's extremely hard for a police officer in Ontario to lose their job. They have to do something extreme to lose the job. I guess that the upper management of the Toronto Police and the SIU, the watchdog groups out there, find that the Toronto Police do not do anything criminal. And to me, that's shocking that this keeps happening. And after Bobby fell 16 stories to his death, this has happened more and more and more in the city of Toronto. And in the past couple months, it's happened an additional 3 times.
Unbelievable.
It is. It's crazy. There was one on King Street where somebody fell to their death. There was
one at Regis's building.
Yeah, I did a documentary on Regis Korchinski Paquette where she had fallen over 20 stories, and the same building,
Yeah.
another female had fell to her death with the interaction with the Toronto Police. And I don't know why these aren't being investigated. It's basically Joseph Martino opened the case and closed it very quickly. That's what I found, Vanessa.
You know, Jay, I think he's opening these books and saying, oh, all these officers are angels, and closing them back and putting them away. Because my mom says you come to the airport with your children, it says, welcome to Canada. And she got her child back in a box. Like, It's not normal to bury your child.
No, it's not. And I can't even really speak on this because it's never happened to me. And I can't even imagine what your mother and you are going through right now. And my heart goes out to you both. It must be extremely difficult to not only lose your brother, but to have the police laugh in your face at it after it's happened.
And they were laughing during the process of him, like, hanging on the window, interacting with them. Like, someone's going through the stress. Why are you smiling?
Well, I noticed that with the ETF officers, the video that you gave to me, I watched that one ETF officer with that big mirror that he had, and he was laughing the whole time.
Yep.
He really was.
Even the guys on the sidewalk, they were like, this is not even my call. I was just, like, they're just rookie cops telling them, I was just called here. It's not even my call.
Right. So let's get back to the actual time that it happened. It was later in the afternoon. ETF shows up, and they gain entry into the apartment. How did they gain that entry? It was from was it a super key, or did they bust the door?
So police gained entry from the superintendent's key.
Right.
And to get into Bobby's room door, ETF actually rammed that door because when we were able to access the unit again, the door had a big hole in it, and then the door was opened. But prior to them ramming it, it was barricaded with all of Bobby's room furniture.
Okay. So after they gained entrance into your apartment, they smashed in Bobby's door, and I know from the film that they were having interactions with him from inside or outside of his door in his bedroom, and also on the next door apartment. They had the window open. Like I said before, that ETF officer had a mirror out and he was looking at Bobby, and the video, it was extremely hard to watch for me. It was very disturbing. I saw the whole thing happen. I edited the video because it wasn't allowed on YouTube. But I can't wrap my head around what happened. And during the interaction with Bobby, there was a couple ETF officers on the roof, and this is where it comes back to the sergeant. The sergeant was on the roof, telling.
Was he?
Yeah, he was telling his officers what to do, and they were going to scale down the side of the building, which they could have done very, very easily because there was only like a 3 or 4 foot drop, And they basically could have distracted Bobby inside of the apartment and then came down and everything would have been over and Bobby's life would have been saved. But they didn't do anything. Like, they did nothing. All they did was just sit there and I didn't even think they're having a conversation with him. They're just yelling at him, weren't they?
Yeah. The whole time, the whole interaction with them was yelling commands.
So, at any point during this, was the MCIT unit, which is the Mobile Crisis Intervention Team, they operate within the Toronto Police, were they contacted at all, or were any doctors contacted at all to come speak to Bobby?
I try so hard not to cry about my brother's case, Jay, but
Right.
they said that he fell before a psychiatrist could arrive. So
Okay.
I guess when they arrived on scene, they didn't feel he had a need for something like that.
That's disgusting behavior, I gotta say. That really angers me when I hear that. In my opinion, they should have contacted a mobile crisis intervention team, because they're all over Toronto, and had a nurse come out instead of basically, if a person is mentally ill and they hear or see people storming them, what do you think the reaction is going to be? It's obviously going to be negative. And Bobby was already scared. He was having an episode. And
he kept also asking to see their badges. How are you going to see the badges through the door?
Yeah.
He didn't believe they were officers.
yeah, and then he was asking for his mother constantly, and they kept denying him that. So I can just imagine the loneliness and isolation he felt in that room, knowing there's a force behind that door at any moment coming in to possibly beat him up or kill him. That's probably what he was thinking in his mind.
He always told my mom that he didn't want to leave this world with a police officer shooting him for his skin color. So he felt that if he opened that bedroom door, whether he'd flinched, moved his arm, did anything, or even listened to their commands, he would have got shot.
Yeah, well, I that doesn't surprise me whatsoever.
And, they would have put it out in the news that suspect pulled weapon when he came out the room.
Well, that's what happened to a person down in Hamilton area, where
Yes.
they went into his apartment, and supposedly, according to the police, he had a toy gun with him, and they shot and killed him. But that wasn't the case. They just seemed to show up on scene with force, act, and then leave a trail of destruction behind, and people's lives ruined. It's not only Bobby's life that was ruined. It's your life. It's your mother's life. It's your family's life, and they don't care. They do not care, and this has to change. And one of the reasons I'm doing this podcast is for change. I'm begging to have this case reopened again, as well as other cases that I've reported on, because it should be reopened again. I have seen so many indiscrepancies watching this video and doing research in this video that the police screwed up so many times, and nobody's been held accountable. And I believe that you have a lawsuit against the Toronto Police, Vanessa?
We do, and we would really like we would really like our case to be reopened, because if you take a look at the video I gave you and you put two and two together, something really went wrong here, and it needs to stop. Too many kids are in boxes too soon.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's getting to the point now where people should not, or they are afraid to call the police now, and I don't blame them. If my trust in the police has diminished tenfold, and I would have a really hard time calling the police on anything that's happened to me, because in the past I've called the police for break and enters. They've come to my home. They get angry because you ask them to do their job, to take pictures and to take fingerprints, and 9 times out of 10 they don't want to do that. They just want to get in, do the report, and leave. There's no investigative work anymore. It's just, I'm gonna put this report, file this report away, and that's it. And when it came to Bobby's life, that's what it seemed to me. It was a cut and dry closed case. And to me, that's not policing. That's pure corruption. Bobby had fallen 16 stories. He had gone out onto the window, which was only probably a foot and a half wide by a foot tall. It was a very small window. He crawled out, and I could tell by the video that I watched that he was having a psychotic episode. He wasn't doing very well, and he ended up falling to his death. And after he fell, can you let us know what happened, Vanessa, after that happened?
Yes, I also wanted to say, like, he did go in and out, like, a few times, and I also questioned, like, why didn't they do more when he came in? Why was, like, it more entertaining for them when he was out the window?
It's exactly my point before, was that it's not like the apartment was in the middle of the building, which would be a lot harder to scale down. It was in the top floor, so if the ETF, which they're trained in, they're trained to rappel off of buildings.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they just had to rappel 3 or 4 feet, and they would have been in that window. It would have literally taken 3 seconds to save Bobby's life. That's all it would have taken, because I watched that video, and it showed Bobby going inside quite often. He would come out, and then he'd go back inside, and it was a time window there where he was inside for about 30 seconds. They could have saved his life then. They really could have, but they just stood there and just wanted to laugh about it. It's extremely disturbing.
It is very disturbing.
So after Bobby fell, did they let you out of the office? What happened after that?
Nope. I wanted to also tell you, after he fell, this was about 7:00 p.m. and 7:01-ish p.m. He actually fell, and after they covered him, an ambulance came. We were wondering why an ambulance showed up after someone passes away. Why was that not there?
Right.
All the time. Ambulance came. Yellow tape was being run. Photographers were taking pictures, I guess forensics. We still didn't know he passed. We thought he was waiting on a psychiatrist. This was like 7, 8, 9, going on to 11, 12 p.m., 12 a.m. in the night, sorry. At 12 a.m. in the night, we were still sitting in the office. We didn't know anything. We seen some people in suits take over. So all the guys that were on scene, as soon as Bobby passed, they went like off the chart. They were like out of there. Like they knew they were in trouble. They're like, we got to get out of here.
This sounds so much like the death of Regis, where
they were all out of there right when she passed, and you guys showed up.
Jeez. Okay. And
it was like a lady in a suit and 2 guys in a suit. They asked us, "Oh, can you have a seat?" They're like, "We're sorry, your son is deceased." My mom is like, "What? Deceased?" And then she collapsed on the ground and she was hollering.
Yeah.
The lady who told us he was deceased, she had no heart when she said this. She said it like she didn't care also. He's deceased, that was it. No explanation, nothing.
Jeez.
We all came out the office screaming, yelling. You've seen this on the video.
Yep.
They just tried to, they were just standing there watching us. I'm not even going to say they tried to comfort us. We tried to go upstairs after screaming in the lobby for 20 minutes. They still wouldn't let us back into the unit. They said it's a crime scene. They asked us all to go stay at a relative's apartment for the night, and up to that night, we didn't know he fell to his death or how he passed. We didn't know anything till the next morning.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And the most disgusting part, Jay, is when I went out there the next morning, there was pieces of his head on the ground. Why is his sister seeing that? There was gloves that everyone was wearing tossed with blood on it. Wow. It was so disgusting.
That's incredible. I didn't know that part.
I had to clean it up as a sister. I'm so traumatized from that.
Yeah, I did not know that happened. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's
So
terrible.
when he fell, he hit the fence of the daycare that's located downstairs on the first floor,
Right.
his head, and piece of the chunk of his head was left on the grass somewhere. How did these people like not see to clean these things up? Like my brother was a human.
They're unprofessional. That's what the Toronto Police are, an unprofessional organization, and it just seems to me that they don't do anything right. Whether it comes to arrests, whether it comes to incidents like Bobby's, Regis, they just, I look at them as like stormtroopers. They come in, they do their job, and then they take off. We have to change this type of mentality in policing, and I thought it would get better, but it only seems to be getting worse. And not only the fact that it's getting worse, but people in the SIU and management at the Toronto Police professional standards just want to ignore things. And I remember when I was a police officer, I was assaulted in my police station where I worked while I was on duty by an on-duty police officer. He headbutted me in my nose and almost broke my nose. And I complained about this individual and nothing was done. And this is two police officers in a police station. Nothing was done. The guy was back at work the next day. So the more stories I hear around Toronto police corruption and what they do wrong is a daily occurrence. I can turn on the news on any given day, and all I have to do is type in Toronto police officer, and something will come up saying that one has been charged. Do you find that, Vanessa, that it's happening more and more frequently?
Yes, and more money is just being thrown their way. More and more of them are just being hired. I'm just seeing more of them.
Yeah. They want to hire more police officers for what? For what purpose? Because the police officers that are on duty now don't seem to work that hard or do anything. It seems that they're mostly interested in doing pay duties and extra work on the side than doing actual police work. When the sergeant made that call, Vanessa, about not speaking to Bobby, your mother not speaking to Bobby, did your mother or yourself ask the police to go speak to him?
Yes,
Okay.
throughout the night, all of us pleaded with them to speak to him, call him, text him. At one point in the night before he passed, my mom did have to use the washroom, but a police officer escorted her to the second floor on an empty unit. He waited outside the door of the washroom till my mom was finished.
Treating her
Yeah, and
treating her like a criminal.
yeah, escorting her back downstairs to the office. So she had no chance of even making it up. Like, she did try one time when she tried to get my older brother, and they stopped her at the elevator part, and the whole floor had about like 10 to 15 of them.
Yeah, I watched that video that you provided for me where your mother was in the hallway pleading with them to speak to Bobby, and
Yes.
the SIU just walked right by her and completely ignored her. I found that to be disturbing. There was no emotions, like zero emotions. They're like robots.
Yep, all of them are very disturbing, and it's such a shame. Like, you need to keep doing what you're doing because this needs to stop, and it won't stop without change.
I agree, and that I'm going to do everything in my power. And I'm not trying to come off as some sort of superhero or anything, because I'm definitely not. But I really want to make change, and I really want to get this case reopened again. I was at the Special Investigations Unit building a couple weeks ago, and I'm trying to get an interview with Joseph Martino, which is very difficult. But when I do, and I will get an interview with him, I want him to tell me why he cleared these officers. I want an explanation, and I want this case reopened because it really needs to be reopened. It really needs to be re-examined, and I think the police can learn a hell of a lot from what the officers on scene did wrong. It should be a training video on what not to do.
Hope you can get that interview with him, and I really hope our case does get reopened because I think because we're more like in a low income neighborhood as well, it gets shuffled to the bottom as not so important.
Oh, if you lived in Forest Hill or beside Drake or something, then you would get first 5-star service for sure.
Yeah.
I like I said, I'm really sorry to hear about your brother and what happened, and I know we spent quite a bit of time together, and I've learned a lot about your family and your background, and I really wish you all the best, and I really want to keep in touch, and I really want to get this case open for you because it's very important.
Thank you for having me, Jay, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me.
You're very welcome. And just before we leave, Vanessa, is there anything you wanna say to the SIU? Maybe Joseph Martino might be listening to this one day. Is there anything you want to say to him about change or anything like that, so he can hear it firsthand from a family member?
Yeah, I want to know if it was his child on that day, if he would have handled the situation any different, because I think he would have.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Excellent.
That's all I have to say for him. I would like to, if I may be little, but I personally would like to meet him one day, because he's finding like hundreds and thousands of these guys no wrongdoing. I want to know why so many people are dying. I just want to ask him, why are so many people dying? Just give me that answer.
97% of cases put before Joseph Martino are cleared. Do you know that? 97% of cases. It's extremely rare that officers get charged with the SIU. Extremely rare. And having a 97% clear rate is very disturbing to me. Anyway, Vanessa, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story with us. I really hope you all the best in the future, and please keep in touch. And any updates that will come forward, we'll definitely be posting those on the podcast. And once again, Vanessa, thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Jay. Take care.